Today is November 10th, 2022, and this week there were 140 reported cases of COVID-19 in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg County, which shows a steady average over the last 2 weeks. Therefore, each subject is comfortable not to wear a mask. Amy, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. How are you doing today?
I think I asked you this question before the interview too.
No worries.
We'll touch it again here.
Yeah, sure. No worries.
And my response is the same. I'm feeling like a little tired.
Tired.
Yeah, just from, it's almost the end of the day. But I am glad that this will be kind of the last thing to kind of wrap things up with, to kind of hear your story.
Yeah.
Will be really interesting, I think, because you specifically work in the health field, right?
Yeah.
So we'll touch up on that, and but first, let me ask you just something that's a little bit maybe more about your where you come from, who you are. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So both my mother and father are from Ecuador. They were kind of high school sweethearts. My mom was a citizen first, so she kind of came here first. Had my brother and I. My dad was kind of back and forth between, well, not really back and forth. When they first came here, it was actually not legal. So he had to kind of attain residency and then long-term citizenship. But I was born in Hackensack, New Jersey in 1996. I don't know if that matters. I guess it dates how old I am. Lived in New Jersey for about 4 or 5 years. And then we moved to Ecuador. So I did actually get to live there for the ages of 5 to 10. And that is where I learned Spanish, so my first language was English. And then we moved to where we currently live, so Indian, South Carolina, in 2007. So I'm more familiar with the United States, but I do go back and forth between Ecuador and here to visit family, since the majority of my family is back in Ecuador.
How has it been for you to kind of experience both cultures in, I guess, just living in the United States? Do you feel like you can connect with one better than the other?
I think with just, my, tweens, early teens, just really my teens to adulthood, I definitely connect more with the United States. Most of my friendships are here. I do still keep in touch with a couple of childhood friends from Ecuador from when I went to school there. But yeah, I think I'm more connected here to people. Although I will say I feel like how I express myself with people here versus how I do it in Spanish or worse off in Ecuador, it's definitely a little different. I feel like different aspects of my personality shine through with one versus the other. But yeah, I think even sometimes catching up with my childhood friends, despite us all being the same age, the experiences that we have are different. So sometimes finding things to talk about, or I'll say something, they're like, I don't get what you're talking about, or yeah, I kind of get it, especially because I don't know if all Latin or South American countries are experiencing this, but I know Ecuador is definitely having a shift to becoming more Americanized. Weirdly enough, I say nieces and nephews because, whenever you have for us, your siblings and cousins are all on the same level and all their children are nieces and nephew no matter what. I know here they do first cousin, second cousin. I don't understand that. But my nieces and nephews celebrated 4th of July in school. And I was like, huh? You're in Ecuador. And that doesn't make any sense. But that's happening. There's that sort of shift. And I'm also seeing that shift in sort of morals and values. My friends, people my age, tend to kind of have the same thoughts, but there's a bit more of, for lack of better words, closed-mindedness, I think, back in Ecuador. In light of a couple of my two classmates that I can think of right off the top of my head, later in life kind of came out as gay, and that's far more difficult in Ecuador versus here. Not to say there are no struggles, but the struggles are not as much, if that makes sense. So
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's definitely a more progressive country.
That's the word. Yes. Progressive. Yeah. So
would you say that there was did you see a difference in how people experience COVID in these different ethnicities or countries, or do you feel like you're not as maybe in touch with them to be able to say that, you know what, that there is a difference?
Yeah, no, there was definitely a difference. I mean, I, kept close in touch with my family, especially my grandmother. She's 80, 82, 83, on dialysis with heart failure, so I've definitely kept very close tabs on her during COVID. Still ongoing, just not as critically as it was back in 2020 when it started. There was definitely a difference. I think here early on, there was definitely that appropriate level of strictness, with mask wearing and business having either limited hours or not to say business should have closed, but like restaurants sticking to more like pickup orders and such. With Ecuador, however, they took it as far as like if your license plate ended on an even number, you could only go out on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. If your license plate ended on an odd number, you could only go out Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays. Sundays, basically nobody could go out. And they took that very seriously. I mean, I had my aunt who was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer right before COVID hit, and she had times where she could not do chemo or radiation because the license plate didn't line up, so they had to reschedule. People were literally physically beaten if they were not following that back in Ecuador. And then there was also a significant delay. Once vaccines did come out, the vaccines that Ecuador was getting, at least the town my family lives in, they're about, 3.5 hours from Guayaquil, which is one of the bigger cities. They initially received the vaccines made in China, like AstraZeneca, which of course then later they came out with, it causes blood clots and all this stuff. So they didn't get to see your Pfizer or Moderna until like a year later. So there was a big delay in vaccinations over there, especially compared to myself, because when COVID hit, I was a medical student, so I was able to get one of the earlier rounds of vaccination.
So you just mentioned that you're a medical student, we're a medical student, now you're practicing it. Uh-huh. So I think your perspective will be very interesting to hear.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that you'll have a lot of perspective, not just in how we processed things here and how we went about things here, but also like in a third world country, right? Mm-hmm. So can you tell me a little bit about your experiences? Really just spit out anything that comes to mind about like being a medical student and then not practicing it and doing all of that during the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you even like the timeline. So I graduated from Winthrop University biology undergrad in 2018, and there was that sort of lapse of applying to physician assistant school, because that's what I am, and I was accepted into Wingate University late 2018, but didn't have a start date until August 2019, yes. So physician assistant school, like the master's program, is divided into what we call didactic year versus clinical year. Your didactic year is your first year and change, where you're just primarily learning. I mean, they call it the like fire hydrant metaphor, where it's like you're absorbing all the knowledge and it's like you're trying to drink water from a fire hydrant. Like that's the amount of information that is being thrown at you in such a short period of time, because the expectation is that when you come out of didactic, you know all the information you need to know to practice, because then clinical year is putting that, medical knowledge actually into clinical experience by seeing patients and, diagnosing and treating. Not necessarily on your own, you're with a preceptor, so somebody who's guiding you and teaching you through it, with some preceptors being a little more protective of their patients and not really letting you make those decisions, versus those who are like, you're going to be doing it when you graduate, you may as well start now. So it just very much varies. So the pandemic, March 2020, occurs when I'm just only one semester into didactic year. During didactic year, you're also learning your like physical clinical skills, by the way, like how do you listen to a heart? How do you listen to lungs? Which seems like it would be so easy, but you have to know like what you're looking for and how to do a physical exam, keeping in mind what you're trying to find in this patient, also trying to be respectful of their space, not just like walking up on somebody and listening to their heart. You have to be able to say like, okay, I'm coming in close, I'm going to breathe normal for me, I take a listen to your heart now, which is what I do now to patients. So I remember when it was March 13th is when everything fell apart because it was a Friday the 13th. I remember that. It was also my father's birthday that week. His birthday was that Tuesday, March 10th. So I remember at that point, people were still like, COVID's just another flu, you know? So my dad, we were like, what do you want to do for your birthday? We always do lunch or dinner as a family. And he was like, let's just do a very calm dinner. He's like, let's just go to like KFC, like somewhere not super busy. And I was like, okay, whatever. At this point, even my school has still been like, COVID's just a flu. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Okay. So we do like a quiet dinner at KFC. I remember while I'm at dinner at KFC, for context, my boyfriend is a nurse, night shift nurse. And he's like, I have just been told that I had the first case of COVID here in Rock Hill as a patient. And they told me 2 days after I've been taking care of this patient. And I'm like, what are you going to do? And he's like, they've told me to do nothing. He's like, I wore the proper gear, so I should be safe. So he did nothing. He just went home as normal. Nope, but it was the confirmed first case of Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Wow.
So he tells me this, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, it's a little more serious than I thought, I guess. And then comes that Thursday, March 12th, and I was in the middle of being finishing up rather. I was being a patient for the year, the students that were about to graduate, they have to show the clinical skills in a test as part of like the graduation process. So they always ask for volunteers. So I was a volunteer patient. And as we're finishing that up, the professor that's in the room grading, she's like, oh, they just sent an email saying that we're switching to online. I'm like, huh? What are you talking about? So I like run to my classmates. We were all hanging out in this one study room all the time. And so I knew where to find them. And the moment I walk in, like all like, dinner plate eyes, like they're like, yeah, it's real. We're switching to online. And I'm thinking, oh God, I'm going to fail. Because like, what's the term for I'm trying to find? Sort of the like, there's a big difference in learning from being in a classroom sitting there to being at home in your room doing online classes. And I knew that. I thought, oh gosh, like this is going to be it's going to be such a thing. And they had no idea how long it would be. They told us it would be like a couple weeks, then a month, and then a semester. And then they were like, just, suck it up. It's just going to be the rest of your career this way. Oh God. The year that was above us, they were in their clinicals and they were called back and they had a full clinical canceled. They were being told the graduation was going to be delayed. It was a disaster, just complete, absolute disaster. So it was kind of tricky to do didactic year online, especially because I think that summer, 4th of July, my parents were like, we're going to a pool party, not a big deal, shouldn't be anything. And then they got COVID, or my mom got COVID. It's like, come on. She gets COVID right around when I'm supposed to be taking this very big, very important exam. Also, our internet stopped working. It's like, what is happening? So I had to go to like a neighbor's house, but then those neighbors also had COVID. So the way they had me like walk in through the garage and then go straight to this room where nobody had been, where they had been cleaned. And then they had left me like a bottle of Lysol so that like if I like left the room, I could like Lysol things to make sure I didn't get sick because they were sick. Because they had also been at that pool party. These are the hoops you jump when you're trying to, because that's the other thing is like, for one, I didn't want COVID, right? Because at this point, was not vaccinated. And there was this thing of like, if you have COVID, you will either just kind of lose your sense of smell or you're drop dead. There was no telling. And at first they were like, oh, young people are fine. But we found very quickly that was not the case. Young people were also dying from COVID, There was no discrimination. It's a virus. It'll take anybody. So that was tricky. Holidays were, of course, tricky too. And then I started clinical year. Trying to think. Yes, so I would have started it. When was 2020. Yeah, I would have started my rotations, as they're called. We have 10 rotations, 8 core, 2 elective, meaning we choose whatever we want for them. The first one we did a strictly online rotation where it was kind of them teaching us, and everybody failed. Some way, somehow we all managed to fail an online rotation. We all failed the test, or most of us failed anyway, because the test had absolutely no correlation to this virtual class we were doing, which was awful. So they were like, yeah, kind of just don't really worry about that. Really?
So you didn't get graded on?
I got a passing. I was given a passing grade. They were all kind of just be like, I mean, they didn't count the exam. They counted like the actual work we were doing, which was the seeing patients and then documenting. Because that's the other thing is we were taught how to document on patients because that's part of our careers as physician assistants is to write a proper note about everything we did during the visit. So we were just kind of documenting on like not real patients, you know. So we kind of got graded on that, not necessarily the exam. They just kind of were like, don't worry about that. And then I had my first official in-person rotation, August? Yes, August to like October at a primary care office. And I had that rotation with multiple other physician assistant students, not from my program, just coincidentally a bunch of us were at that same place. And it was such a like nose goes thing when like a COVID patient came in. It's like, oh, whose turn is it? Nose goes, like I don't want it. Because all of us by our different programs had kind of been told like, if you get COVID and you have to go in isolation, you're losing 2 weeks of your rotation, which means that you will get delayed for graduation. And in my head, I'm thinking like, if I get delayed graduation, I just spend another $13,000 another semester. So I was like, I am not getting COVID.
Oh my gosh, you had to pay, like it wasn't like, oh, we'll delay your graduation by 2 weeks. It was literally like
if it gets delayed, you get delayed a whole semester and that's on you. And I was like, no, it won't be. Not me, it won't be because I am not going to get COVID. And that actually led to a very tough decision, which I don't think I shared with a lot of my shared and that my classmates didn't have to make this sort of decision, or if they did, I don't know about it. But I mentioned kind of earlier in this interview that I had an aunt who was diagnosed right at the beginning of COVID, with stage 4 breast cancer, metastasis and everything, meaning it had spread to other parts of the body. And my parents in December were like, we don't know if this is her last holiday, so we're going to go spend it with her. And I had to pick between going to see her and risking getting COVID, which would then risk me not graduating on time and not getting to go and hoping she would make it. I chose the latter. I'm still figuring out if I regret it or not because she passed that following February, so I didn't get to see her again. And we were outright told by our program as holidays were approaching, they were like, you guys shouldn't travel, and if you travel and you get COVID, again, your graduation will be delayed, that's on you. And I know a lot of my classmates traveled. I know they did. And I know a few that got COVID and of course either didn't say anything or had some sort of workaround and didn't end up having graduation delayed. But because I was, fully going to have to leave the country, it's a lot trickier when you go back home, and visit family. So.
Were you close to your aunt?
Very.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah. She's one of my mom's oldest sisters, or elder sisters. And she definitely was part of my upbringing when I did live in Ecuador. Her daughters and I and my brother, who also did this interview, are all very close. My mom is like a second mom to them. So yeah, it was really difficult, especially again with her just having a lot of hiccups in her diagnosis and treatment because of COVID. So when people dismiss COVID or are very people got sick, but it's not a big deal or something. I'm like, you have no idea how it affects any one single person, let alone a whole family, group, society, etc. And when she passed, I was in the one rotation, because again, with rotations, you kind of just get assigned somewhere for 5 weeks. My women's health rotation, I was sent out to Ahoskie, North Carolina, which is a town about 5 hours away. So she passes when I'm in that town with just one classmate. My classmate and I were roommates over there because she got sent for her general surgery rotation. I get sent for my women's health, and that's when she passes.
So you were alone to kind of process that information.
Yeah. And when I tell the program, hey, this has happened, their response is, how many days are you going to take off? So I said, I guess 1. Because of how they handled it. Just that response very clearly told me, if I take off too much time, they're going to punish me. So I was like, well, 1. And then the next day I was right back into an operating room helping, deliver a baby or whatever crap I was doing during that rotation. Don't remember because I was so busy morning.
I can hear the, I don't know if I want to call it frustration that might have come from not being allowed to really process that emotional experience.
Yeah. And I definitely wanted to kind of target that in this interview because I know number one, am Latina, so that's kind of why I'm here, but also kind of representing healthcare employee, essential worker, et cetera, et cetera. Healthcare as a career can really have a lot of burnout. I don't want to say it's a toxic environment because that's very dependent on who you work with, what you do, et cetera. But I think, especially when you're trying to get a career quickly, right? Like a physician assistant career, physician associate is now the title too. You're kind of taking what med school teaches you and you're going from this to this. You're trying to squeeze it all in a really quick amount of time. So the expectation is you go, 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 go. You can't miss a lot of days. You can't do this. You get 7, like in about year in some period, we were allowed 7 days off. And you couldn't use one at the beginning of the rotation or at the end of the rotation. You couldn't use more than 2 in a row. Like there was a lot of stipulations to that, which come from a place of them saying you have to take this clinical experience seriously because that's what you're going to do in the future. It makes sense. But I think by that token, it doesn't leave a lot of room for when life happens, such as when you lose a family member. And I think COVID made that even worse, I think with that pressure again of like, well, I don't want to get delayed or, I can't take this day off because what if I get COVID later and then I have to take a day off then? I think it just made things even more complicated. So yeah, there definitely was some getting through it. Like there's this sort of, what's the term? Like not nature. There's this concept that like, oh, you're gonna like go to med school. Like it's gonna be hard. You're gonna suffer, but that's okay. And kind of coming out of it, I kind of turn around and go, why? Why does it have to be like that? Especially made worse again when a global pandemic is occurring. Shouldn't we leave more room for sympathy, empathy, like understanding people, especially students, right? Like, not to be that guy, but I was not getting paid to do any of this. I wasn't getting paid to go and see patients when I'm still thinking like, okay, like it's my aunt's funeral. Thankfully it's around lunchtime, so I'll be able to watch it on video through WhatsApp or whatever. I've known her at Skype or something like that. I'm sitting in the parking lot of this medical office watching her funeral and thinking, God, like I should be there, but I can't. Yeah. I can't because they won't leave room for that, Yeah. So.
That is very, almost feels, I think inhumane is such a strong word, but it almost feels like a lack of understanding. Like you said, empathy, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
There's no room for empathy in this human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does affect different factors in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so sorry to hear that you didn't get to do that, especially because it's not like you could go back any other day.
Yeah. And I think that's especially difficult when, you're the child of an immigrant, when you have like family in South America, because it's like, if you have family here and grandma passes and she lives in Ohio, you take a day trip or weekend trip to Ohio, it's all good, it's done. Here, getting to Ecuador, I mean, you leave Charlotte at 7 a.m. and I'm not getting to grandma's house until 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m. because you have to fly to Miami or fly to Atlanta and then you fly to Ecuador and then you drive 3 hours from Guayaquil to Puerto Viejo because they live like in a tiny town, and just getting to Ecuador is a literal day trip. So if I'm like, well, I'm gonna go for the funeral on Thursday, okay, I gotta fly Wednesday, I go Thursday, and then I fly back out on Friday. Also, paying for a ticket to go to Ecuador is anywhere between $600 to like over $1,000. So if you're like, well, I'm just, life happens, grandma passed, let me just like drop money. I mean, you're looking at like $1,000 on like a last minute sort of trip, which of course to see your loved one last time is worth it. But when you're in a fast-paced program, there's not room to just kind of say, hey, I'm going to go to another country for a couple of days. Peace. And I think perhaps my program maybe knew that when I said, hey, this has happened. I think they were kind of like, well, you're not really going to be able to go there. So, like, do you really need that many days? And it's like, well, I guess you're right. No, because you and I both know that I can't leave.
Did it feel like maybe you were experiencing that alone?
The not being able to travel out? To an extent, I definitely was not the only to lose a family member. I know a different classmate actually lost her mother, who had ALS. And her mother passed, oh gosh, it was like right around when we were about to graduate, so it was like a lot of stuff happening. And I think they kind of also told her, like, yeah, you get like a day or two. Which I was like, oh, I remember, it was our capstone. So we had presentations. So this girl is like, I want to say up in front of the class, but we did capstone through Zoom. So we did presentations through Zoom. She's up in front of the class presenting, and like her mom had died like the day or two before. And I found out later, and I thought, like, oh God, what are we doing here? This poor girl, her mother died. In my case, they could be like, nah, it's her aunt. Not that should have been the attitude, but I could see why they would do that. But if I was like, my mom died, and they were like, cool, you still have to present, I'd be like, no. No way.
Did at some point, did you ever like rethink your career choice?
No. I definitely, if not out of spite, was like, I gotta finish this. like this is what I wanted to do for so long. This is what I wanted to do for a decade, if not more. I think in my case specifically, it actually would have been worse had I quit, because I feel like I'm like, my aunt would not have wanted that for me to quit because of her passing, So like, I do not regret it now. I didn't regret it then. But it is difficult. It is a difficult journey to get to a healthcare career. Most of them even, like even when I was a nurse assistant, I was doing night classes while doing undergrad to get my nurse assistant certification so I could get hours so that I could apply to PA school. So like, kind of no matter what healthcare career you're going into, like it is a hard trip to get there. You make a lot of sacrifices that you have no idea you're going to make until you're in the moment, and then you kind of have the choices put in front of you, and you're like, well, it's either that my dream I've had for years or not. So. And
then add a global pandemic to it.
Oh gosh. Ooh, yeah, exactly. Which kind of ties in because the reason I get sent to a hosky, there was a lot of rotations, but especially more specialized ones like women's health, were closing the doors to students when the global pandemic happened. They were like, no, it's a risk, it's a liability. We don't know what they're bringing in. Like, they may have COVID, putting patients at risk, this and that. Like, there was less and less of a pool to pick from rotations. Hence why, when the lottery happened, I ended up getting sent 5 hours away to do a women's health rotation. A very not hands-on women's health rotation, especially, which is hard because already physician assistants don't really get a lot of room in the women's health field. So, that was an added obstacle. So,
what do you think helped you process some of the things that you got to miss out on?
I think, that's a good question. I think, having my family, still do currently live with my parents. I think that helped. Having some sort of company, camaraderie. I can't imagine being in some sort of like dorm on a college campus by myself. I feel for those who were like in undergrad or a different sort of college experience, having to deal with it on their own. I kept seeing my boyfriend during the pandemic. I still do, obviously, because we're still dating. And I think that helped too. And with him, it was very like, okay, like you're going to come over and we're going to just watch Queer Eye for hours and we're going to have brownies and vanilla ice cream. And that's what we did like every Saturday. Oh, we picked up food. So we'd have like lunch/dinner. So I think kind of having that helped. I think having a goal at the end to like knowing like, okay, this is not forever. Like it is so, like this is so serious. It is a global pandemic, but this is not forever. Even if it takes us several years to get through it, we will get through it. It's just gonna, take time. Because I remember people saying like, "Oh, this will be done by spring. It'll be done by summer," and I was like, "Yeah, we're looking at least a year, and that's okay as long as we do it right, and we try to minimize casualties and maybe work on that vaccine." Which unfortunately we know that were a lot of people's lives. A lot of people passed from it or have now had like long-term effects from it. Knock on wood, but I still have not had it. Hope it stays that way. So I think that's some of the stuff that helped, at least me, again, knowing like, okay, I have this goal of becoming a PA, whether they like it or not, I'm going to be a PA by the end of this. But also like, okay, this pandemic sucks, but it's not going to be here forever. Things will get better at some point. They have to, or we will find a way for them to do so. I have my family, I have my friends, even if it's my friends through like a little FaceTime or texting or anything. Video games. Oh God, that was a big one. Animal Crossing came out right when the pandemic hit, and that was absolutely perfect because then it was like my friends and I were like visiting each other's islands and like giving each other gifts. Like it was perfect. I mean, I don't think a game has ever boomed as much as this game did because it just came out at the absolute perfect time. Comes out February 2020. Pandemic hits March 2020. Perfect. So I'm sure Nintendo's thriving from that still. And that's kind of silly, but a video game helped too.
No, I think we all need outlets and some those kind of ways to help us even just distract ourselves from I don't want to say reality because even that's a reality in itself, but maybe to focus on more of the good stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. What I find interesting is that you had time to play a video game while you were being a medical student.
Oh, I made myself have time. I would take part of my weekend to do that. I think that was kind of a hard thing initially, was kind of making myself have a regimented schedule while at home because it was so easy to be like, okay, I don't have class till 9. I'm gonna sleep till 8:50. Get up, wash your face real quick, and then you get on Zoom. Like, it was very easy to do that, but I tried to say like, no, we need to have some sort of schedule, some sort of structure to succeed, because now the onus is on me. I have to take the responsibility to, first of all, show up to these classes, because it's not like they take attendance. They don't care. If you fail, that's on you. You're the one spending thousands of dollars. But then also take the time to not get burnt out, because I knew if I don't have some sort of little bit of life outside of this, like I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to succeed. So kind of my Saturdays were like my day off. It was like, okay, I get to play some Animal Crossing, I get to hang out with boyfriend, and then Sunday we get right back into it. Sunday morning I may like have breakfast with family, but then we get back into it. And then those are kind of things that were nice. Again, not in no capacity to say having a pandemic was a good thing, but finding the silver linings. Like I was doing classes at home, and so my dad and I, who then got moved to working from home, would have lunch together. Like, okay, like I don't have classes between 12 and 1, and he'd go, okay, cool, I'll finish my work by 12 so that you and I can have lunch together, and then we have that like hour together. The first like month or two, my mom's a nanny. She was also at home, but then after a while, her bosses were like, yeah, it's fine, you can come back to the houses. But for that month or two, it was just mom at home, which was really nice to just have her around. Even like therapy, I had a therapist through the school, and it was actually pretty easy to just be able to hop on a Zoom call and talk to her versus having to like drive from one campus building to another campus building to go see her. Not that that was that hard, but the Zoom certainly made it much easier. And it was even easy to squeeze a session with her like between classes. And exercise, I like made myself exercise. I thought like, wouldn't it be funny if by the end of this pandemic, next time my friends see me, I'm like a little bit buffer. So I like started working out, and then since then I've stuck with it. I was working out at home, and then once like I started feeling more comfortable, like being like in a gym publicly, because I'd never been to a gym. I started doing that, which I still do now. So I don't know, I got some good stuff out of it. Again, because I was like, I kind of have to, like to get through this, I gotta find some good or do some good. So.
Yeah, I think that those are important things to look for.
Mm-hmm.
You need to look at the good things in order to be able to withstand the bad things that come with it.
Right, yeah.
What other connections do you feel like you had with COVID-19? Are there any other ones that come to mind?
I don't know. I mean, I saw a lot of it while in school, because I had different clinical settings. I mean, I was in primary care where people would come in and say, oh, I think I just have the sniffles, and then you'd test them and they were full-blown positive for COVID, which you're like, great. Or in the hospital, like I would have like, oh, this patient's got COVID, I gotta go see them, wear an N95 or whatever. I think, I mean, that's kind of like the biggest, albeit strongest connection to COVID-19. Again, I mentioned before, like my aunt's passing, indirectly caused by COVID, because she actually has breast cancer, but COVID complicated things. My father had a couple family members also passed from COVID-19 in Ecuador, like his cousin, one or two cousins. I think those are definitely mostly the connections I had with it, yeah.
Yeah, what do you think was the strongest, not strongest, but what is the, if there is any, experience that you remember having with the patient during COVID? Was there any one experience that really stands out from your memory? Anything that you would have been like, wow, like that just really scared me, or that really stands out because of, I don't know, an action that you saw, whether that be good or bad?
I mean, I honestly cannot think of a big one right this moment, but what I can say is just how surprising the long-term effects of it have been, right? People think respiratory virus, it must all be respiratory, but we're finding people who have like long-term fatigue, like they just are forever and always now tired, which I can't imagine, having a life before then where you did not feel this constant fatigue, and then you have COVID and that's it, that's game. I remember I worked with this nurse during my pediatric rotation, poor thing. So I was there in like April, May, and she had COVID the October before. Her taste buds were a mess. Chocolate was disgusting to her. She loved chocolate before she got COVID. And after that, she was like, it is the most vile thing I've ever tasted. It's like, you may as well be making me eat puke. I was like, really? It's chocolate. I love chocolate. She's like, yeah, no, it doesn't taste the same anymore. Things don't smell the same. Things don't taste the same. Things just kind of smell bad, taste weird to me. When my mom had it, she kind of said that too. She's like, when I eat a burger, I don't taste the bun or the meat. I kind of taste the ketchup, and it's just like very strong in your face tomato. And I was like, whoa, it's like that. Heart-wise, I work in cardiology. The amount of young patients I have who then end up with not necessarily like a long-term defect, but like a pericarditis, like inflammation of the heart, where like it causes them chest pain, and we're like, oh God, is this a heart attack? No, thankfully. But it's just the heart tissue gets involved with the virus, and then they have inflammation. And so like when they like lean forward, it hurts, or if they touch the chest, that kind of stuff. I've had patients who, after having COVID, end up with this like kind of well-known arrhythmia called atrial fibrillation, where basically like top two chambers of the heart and two bottom chambers of the heart are kind of out of sync, which means that they can throw a blood clot. So now you just have your heart going fast, and it has a chance of throwing a blood clot, because you had COVID. I've seen young and old, primarily older patients, but I've seen some young patients have that happen to them as well, which the kind of treatment for that is you're just on a blood thinner now to make sure you don't get that clot, because if you get that clot, you might have a stroke. So like, do I have one big, example like that in my face that I can think of? No, but seeing how much it affects it, especially, my daily work in cardiology, like you wouldn't think a respiratory virus would be that part of my work, but it most certainly has been, and it's interesting.
Well, it sounds like all of those cases were pretty dramatic.
So
it's like it's not like one case that stands out, because everybody, I'm sure for them, it's like, oh my gosh, what is
I guess that's fair. You asked for one, and I was like, well, there's like this and this and this, because like the bar is low, I guess. Which is like, that's sad. Yeah, no, I definitely like, I've seen the changes in healthcare, like the access to care patients have because of COVID or not. Like, oh, they had this procedure, well, got canceled because they have COVID. I've had, again, when patients are like in regular heart rhythm, and we're like, okay, cool, we'll like schedule a procedure, shock them out of it. Well, they had COVID 3 weeks ago, and anesthesia will be like, yeah, they had COVID 3 weeks ago, we can't do it. Like, it's been 3 weeks. You can do it, you can just mask up or something. No, they're like, no, it's still too soon. So you're gonna let them sit in this regular heart rhythm? Yes, as it turns out. So it's kind of bonkers.
What are some of the feelings or emotions that you remember having, if any, either positive or negative, that you recall maybe experiencing when you were going to see your first in-person patient during this global pandemic?
It's really funny you asked that because I passed out.
Did you really?
Yeah. So I have a history of passing out. They've never pinpointed a reason why. I guess the diagnosable term would be like vasovagal syncope, which means either like, you got a little hot, you experienced some sort of end of spectrum, whatever, if I didn't eat or something, I'm more likely to pass out. So I like walk in, bright eye, bushy tail, first day of my rotation. It's this rotation that is conveniently like 3 to 5 minutes from my house. So I was like, yes, this is awesome. The next 5 weeks are going to be great.
And how long were you into was it the didactics?
This was clinical. Okay. So once I started going into actual like doctors' offices or hospitals or whatever, those are clinical. So my very first rotation was actually online. So that was the exception. Like that would have been in person, but again, because of COVID, they kind of wanted to delay it a little bit. But I think after a while they realized like we can't keep delaying them without just fully not letting them graduate on time. So my rotation 2, but first in-person rotation was at a primary care office or, family practice, whatever you want to call it. Again, 3 to 5 minutes away from home. I'm so excited. Like, it's going to be great. It's my first day. My first time I get to wear my white coat. Oh, because you always want to wear your white coat when you first, get into a clinical year. And there's this guy there. He's a Lincoln Memorial University physician assistant student. He's been there a couple weeks. The doctors are nowhere to be found because I got there so early, I guess. And he's like, I'll show you the ropes. And he's like, start showing me stuff around, gives me a little bit of a tour, gets me set up on the computer. I'm like, great. And first patient of the day shows up and he's like, you want to go see together? And I was like, yes. And we get into the room and he was like, how do you want to do this? Like, do you want to run it or do you want me? I was like, oh, it's my first patient. Like, would you mind if I just watched you do it? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, it's your first day.
So this wasn't even a patient that you were going to practice on.
No.
You were observing.
No, I was watching. And he's just talking to her. Like, nothing gruesome is happening. It's just she's sitting there, he's standing, I'm standing beside him, and we're just having a conversation. I'm just watching. And I start getting that, I know when I'm going to pass out because I get that kind of antsy feeling. I start kind of so high,
And had it happened to you before?
Yeah. I had a history of it. So this was like the 20th time. Like I know when it's coming, so I was kind of getting a little antsy. I'm like, oh, weird. Okay. I was like, that's weird. Well, whatever. Ignored it. I kind of tell him I was like, I'm fine. And then he's still talking to her. And after a while, I'm like, I'm getting really sweaty. And so finally, I'm like, oh no, my vision starts to kind of go, and I'm like, oh, and he's like, are you okay? Like, he finally turns, he's like, are you okay? And apparently at this point, I'm pale, sweaty, and I'm like, I'm gonna go. And he's like, you're not gonna be able to go by yourself. So he had to walk me over to a desk, and he's like, what? I'm like, I don't know. So I had to sit there. It was actually kind of scary because again, when I feel like I'm about to pass out, I say I passed out, but I've only one time actually fully lost consciousness, but usually I recover pretty quickly, but I remember that time I was so out of breath, could not breathe, could not see anymore. It was just pouring sweat, and I was like, what is wrong with me? So that was my first experience with a patient. It was kind of funny. It happened actually one other time during my rotations. The following summer, I was in my elective cardiology rotation, and it happened somewhere in the middle too. Similar situation. My preceptor and I walked into a patient room. We started talking to her, and I started to feel it coming on. I told him, I was like, I'm gonna step out, and he was like, okay, cool. 5 minutes later, he comes out, and he just finds me face down, pouring sweat, pale, and he's like, what happened? I left you alone for 5 minutes, and I was like, yeah, I was about to pass out. So like, I don't know why it happened, but it did. But that was my first experience. But actually, like seeing patients, like physically dealing with them, doing physical exams, like I don't remember what it was for. I mean, it was probably like standard like physical, like a yearly physical where you just kind of check them, listen to heart, lungs, make sure their joints are moving okay. You know, depending on their age, you're asking routine, like have you had a colonoscopy, have you had your mammogram, that kind of stuff. In that practice is where I learned to do flu shots, which I found out I actually have a really good hand for. Apparently, when I gave shots, they were pretty painless, which was very exciting because I was terrified of giving a shot. So
now I know that I need to go to you to get a flu shot.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so yeah, that was my first experience, like actually in a room with a patient. But I don't remember my actual first like. I think like later that day he was like, "Do you want to actually like start seeing the patients yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I got it." So
you took the, I don't want to say the risk, but you chose to still be able to be with patients even though that had happened.
100%. I mean, like, you know, in the terms of the rotation, again, like I mentioned earlier, like we were not allowed to take the first day or last day off the rotation. So I was like, I can't go home. Like I literally am here for the day. So I either am just going to pass out again or like I'll just, you know, sit pretty. I don't know, find something to do. Patient care is not necessarily what's made me pass out again. It's been so many things in the past. So that didn't deter me. Like I didn't think like, oh God, I can't see patients. I was just kind of like, it's another day, just another time of it happening. The counter's back down to 0. We'll see how long this goes. You know, like in my head, there's always like this little counter. Okay, when's the last time I passed out? It's been X amount of days or years. Okay, cool. You know.
So it's never like set, it's not a pattern.
No. There's things that I know can make it more likely to happen. Like when I get blood drawn, I don't stare at it. Like, does it freak me out? No, but like, I just look away. Like, I'm like, you know, better safe than sorry. I'll just look away and they're like, "Oh, you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm literally just looking this way. You keep going. It doesn't hurt." You know? That is funny though, like, cause you mentioned like, oh, did it deter you? Because I remember when I was, like 16, 17, and yes, I still saw a pediatrician at that age. But it is a funny thing. I feel like, I don't know if that's like a Latino thing or what, but when I talked to my friends, they were like, "Yeah, I stopped seeing my pediatrician like the moment I like got my period or returned this year." And I was like, my parents had me see my pediatrician until I was like legally an adult. Like I didn't see just a generic primary care doctor until I was 18, you know? Like I was pediatrician from birth to 17. And when I tell people that, they're like, oh, like they're weirded out. I'm like, oh, what? I didn't know. But like it's all American. Like any American person I know, like does not understand. Like, oh, you went to them until you were how old? But anyway, my parents wanted me to be seen for this whole passing out situation, and two interesting things my pediatrician said, and I will not give her name. Number one, when they couldn't find a cause, because I mean they did even a cardiac workup on me, like they like checked a heart ultrasound, check EKG, because they're like, oh shoot, maybe she's got some like valve issue or something. No. My dad was like, what are we gonna do? And she was like, you just have to hope she's not like walking through traffic. And he's like, what did you just say about my daughter? And I remember, like, I wasn't even paying attention. Like, he told me this years later, and I'm like, she said that? Like, he was like, were you in the room? And I was like, yeah, I was in the room, but, like, I don't remember. I wasn't paying attention. You know, I was just a dumb teenager. But, yeah, apparently she told him, she's like, you just have to hope she's not walking through traffic. And when he was like, what did you say? She was just kind of like, oh, you know, like, you just have to tell her, like, she feels like she's gonna pass out, like, sit on, she like, try to kind of, like, dial it back, but, like, she clearly said a kind of ugly thing, which is like, if she passes out in traffic, she'll die, you know? So, like, don't say that about a person's child, that's insane. Yeah. So, number one, that, but number two, the same pediatrician, one of the times she saw me was after an incident where I passed out because I was in my biology class in high school, and our teacher, for whatever reason, I don't remember, decided to show us a video of, like, it was like an educational video. It wasn't just him being cruel, but in the video it was like, oh, like this is like a reconstructive surgery video of a little boy whose face got like fully deformed by like a pit bull attacking him or something. I know. Ooh. I made it like not even 5 minutes in. Like I think they barely even showed the kid, but I saw and heard enough and was out. One of my classmates genuinely looked at me. She's like, I thought you had died. Like I thought you fully were dead. So just how like quickly I passed out, I guess. And so I told my pediatrician about this incident, like, hey, it happened again, because she asked. And she was like, medicine might not be for you. And I was like, wow. Am I allowed to curse?
Did you get any chance to hear any of the conversations of patients getting the information of like, hey, you have COVID?
I mean, I've had to be on the end of telling them sometimes, and I think sometimes they're like in disbelief, like they're like, oh, couldn't possibly be me, or like, really, like where, So yeah, I've definitely been present for it. I think there's always a little bit of disappointment, like they always seem a little like, oh darn, like I got COVID, especially if you're somebody who, much like myself, I've been like, oh, I haven't gotten it. Like, there's almost a thing of pride of not getting COVID. Like, I didn't get COVID because I wore my mask, I washed my hands, I got vaccinated. So, some people don't care. I have not encountered, but I have heard tale of people saying, patients being like, that's not real. And it's like, what? But like, we did lab work on, like we did a swab, but I've never had a patient like say like, oh, that's not real or something. But people who didn't really believe in or didn't take the pandemic too seriously, I have seen them kind of go like, okay, like, yeah, I have COVID, but
and the reason, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, I was gonna say, so like for them it's a disappointment of like, oh, here we go again with this COVID thing. But the ones that like, again, are like proud they hadn't had it and then they get it, they're like, oh, really? Like, or even again, those that have been very careful almost feel like shame, like, oh, but I was so careful. Where did this come from? So it's just, yeah.
And the reason I asked that question is because I guess it came from what you said about your pediatrician, right? Mm-hmm. Which what she had said felt a little uncaring.
Oh, yeah.
Right? As to how she kind of went about telling your dad, like, well, she's gonna pass out, like, just make sure that she's not gonna be in the middle of traffic.
Yeah.
So, do you find that physicians, your patients felt maybe cared for in a way with the news?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you have COVID. So it was, I think I'm interested to know, like, how was the news received, which you kind of already talked about.
Oh, yeah.
But that's where the question came from, because I was like, well, I wonder what it was like to tell someone, hey, you have COVID. Do you remember that experience?
Oh, yeah.
How was it, like, in the beginning? And how is it now?
I mean, in the beginning, it was definitely scary because it was more like, am I giving this person a death sentence or not, Because when you're going to tell somebody they have a diagnosis, you always want to be able to, again, now that I'm on the end of being a provider, you kind of want to be able to tell them, like, well, what am I going to do about this? Like, you can't just be like, you have COVID, because they're going to be like, okay, so like, what's next, So in the beginning, when we didn't have a lot of treatment for COVID, it was kind of like, I'm sorry to have to tell you bad news, but we ran your tests and you're positive for COVID-19. It was kind of like, I would give them a pause to let them process. And again, a little bit of whatever, or disappointment, followed with like, well, what do I do? And early on, it was like, go home, rest, drink water. If you feel like you're getting short of breath, go to the hospital. That was all I could kind of do. I tried to be as delicate about it as possible, and kind of really stress that, like, don't wait. Like, in the moment you are like, I'm short of breath, run. Don't walk, run. I even would tell patients, like, if you can get your hands on like an oxygen reader, which, gosh, those were, like, there wasn't a lot of those because everybody was freaking out. Like, I need to check my oxygen within good reason. Like, I know my parents and I bought ours from like eBay because like my mom's friend tipped her off that there was this vendor on eBay selling them for like a reasonable price of like $20-$30 or something. No clue how much those actually cost. So like, I would say, like, if you have one of those at home, definitely check. If you get below 94 at any point, go to the hospital, because you want to be like in that like 90, 92, 93 if you're in a hospital, like you cannot leave the patient's bedside, you know, as a provider, nurse, whatever. So if they're at home, I'm banking on more like 94, hoping to kind of get them seen sooner rather than later. Now it's a little bit more like if they have, now it's more of a flu, right? Like early on we were like, that's another flu. Wrong. It wasn't a flu yet. Now it's more like it because now we have like annual boosters we can offer. There's even talk of combining the influenza and COVID vaccines into one to make it like one annual booster, which I think would make sense. Now I can be more like, you can, you know, if you're in the hospital, they can do certain antivirals. I think I can do like remdesivir might be the big one. If they have been vaccinated, they're more likely to have very mild symptoms. So telling them like rest and water does not feel nearly as bad. You know, back then it was like, I don't know if this is the last time I'm talking to you or not. Now it's like, you will probably be okay unless you have a lot of other issues going on. And when they're hospital, they have access to oxygen, and they have like primary care doctors in a hospital, or hospitalists as we call them, have like a guideline regimen they give patients. So, you know, we can kind of say like you'll be treated with that.
And this is all good information, I think, to know for all the public to really be aware of. I just had an interview where we talked about just like the power of knowledge and how the lack of knowledge really can put you in a different position in our society, right? So I think definitely knowing what's out there, what will be out there, is also important.
Yeah.
Amy, so we're almost at an hour. I want to be respectful of your time, but I also want to make sure that we've captured everything that you really want to tell about your story. Is there anything else that comes to mind when you think of COVID-19, or anything else that you really want to share with us before we, you know, kind of head out?
You know, I think earlier you asked me about like if I had like what strong connection with COVID-19. Kind of completely forgot that this past holiday, after I had graduated, I took my boyfriend to have like a minor procedure done that he was going to have done. It was planned. We were aware of it. Nothing emergent. And I was so frustrating because, you know, I was experiencing a lot of COVID from the end of as a medical student / future provider. And then now this year provider, but at that time, not yet. But this was like one of the first times I kind of had it more as like on the end of patient, because he has this procedure. Great. Everything goes good. I take him home. Fantastic. And then 2 days later, the surgeon calls him directly to be like, so sorry, I have COVID. Because now we're like, well, and now I'm like, okay, well, now you've been exposed because this guy did the procedure on you. And he's like, well, you're fine. I said, no, because he came out into the waiting room and talked to me for 15, 20 minutes explaining to me what all he did to you and what it entailed. So I've also had now this contact. So this was right before New Year's. So we spent New Year's very, like, dinner with my parents, but very like they're on this end, we're over here situation, which I think that was kind of interesting. And again, thankfully at that point, the vaccine was out, so I felt a little more protected, and also the surgeon had worn like N95 and then a mask on top. But it was still, especially because, you know, when he had the procedure the following day, we have a double date with some of our best friends. So then to have to tell them, like, oh God, like the guilt of it, like, oh my God, we're so sorry. Like we're told today by the doctor that he has COVID, and they were like, yeah, it's fine. You know, we didn't get it. They didn't get it. Thankfully it worked out, but it was still kind of like being on the receiving end of it, in that I had that contact, which I've apparently narrowly missed several times, because my mom had it at one point, my dad had it at a different point, didn't get it from either of them, didn't get it from surgeon, have yet to get it from a patient. I definitely had a situation in a different rotation where there was this man who, his biggest symptom was that he was having what we could call new ultramental status. So like he has dementia baseline, but he was acting even more off than usual, like having a hard time with memory, that kind of stuff, you know. And my preceptor, who has known him, was kind of like, seems a little bit off. This man is very hard of hearing. I'm in there with a mask, of course, I always was. I spoke Spanish, he did too, because this was at a primarily Spanish-speaking clinic, and she had decent Spanish with having these patients. And she's like, would you mind, like, do you mind, like, lowering your mask just so he can, like, see your lips because he has a really hard time hearing? And I was like, yeah, of course. So I, like, go to the opposite end of the room and do this, and I'm, like, yelling, you know, like, ¿Cómo se siente? You know? And then I find out the next day, like, oh, he was confused because he had COVID. And I was like, come on. This is the one time I took my mask off, you know? Like, again, did not get it, thankfully, but, like, we were thinking, like, oh, God, is he having a stroke? You know, like, what is happening? Nope, it was COVID. So.
Oh, my goodness.
So, like, yeah.
Such interesting stories, for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time, for letting me hear your story, for sharing it with us in the Living Archives. It's been really great to hear it and to be able to, in a way, help expand that voice a little bit for medical staff and also just Latinos in general. So thank you so much for
absolutely.
For sharing that with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.